What's going on, YouTube family? T.O. here, Simplistic Fishing, back at you today after a long weekend of THSBA regionals and pre-fishing and all that good stuff. Wanted to give you an update on how that went, and then I also want to give you some tips tonight on spring fishing. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes during the spawn, that is some of the toughest times for me to fish, which I know sounds strange because everybody else says it's the best time to be fishing. But for me personally, that is probably the time when I struggle sometimes the most throughout the entire year, other than the wintertime. So I want to talk to you guys a little bit about some things that I learned this weekend. You guys are probably like, "Duh, you idiot." You know that always works. But anyways, I want to share some of my stuff that I'm learning along the way with you guys. So that's what tonight's video is going to be about. I'll give you a quick recap of the THSBA stuff, and then we'll move over and we'll talk about some spring baits and some things to use right now when we're right in the middle of spawn, kind of pre-spawn, post-spawn, kind of a funky kind of time that we're in. I want to share some tips and tricks with you. So hang around. Hopefully it'll be a good one. Let's go. All right, well, let's go ahead and jump into this thing. And first, let's talk about the recap of the THSBA, which, if you're not familiar with this area or if you're not familiar with high school fishing, that is the Texas High School Bass Association. So, super cool club to be a part of. Super, super fun to do that throughout the years. And they actually have a new company now, NSR, which is some college recruiting that are going to help these boys hopefully get some recruiting looking at them for bass fishing. So some super cool times for bass fishing in the high school fishing here in the Texas area. But anyways, real quick recap on how we did. So you guys know, if you've been following me at all, or if not, my son again won Angler of the Year 2 times in a row. So this is back to back. He's won Angler of the Year for the Central Division. Super proud of him and his partner, Jackson. They have just done a phenomenal job throughout the regular seasons and really just doing a great job of staying on top. They definitely had to battle that one out at the end. But again, if you've been following with me, you knew that they had secured that about a month ago. But they finally got the award this weekend. So the depressing news, though, is regionals has their number. I have no idea why. If you look at all of our regular season tournaments, we have got our limit, or they have got their limit on every single one. That's 10 tournaments in a row that they've gotten their limit. That is crazy. But in regionals, the only 2 tournaments, so you figure there's 10, 12. So 10 out of 12 tournaments, they've gotten their limit. The only 2 tournaments they haven't, both have been regionals. This weekend was really bad. This was our worst tournament that we ever had. We actually the boys came in with 0 fish this weekend. So really tough weekend. And what sucked was the pre-fishing was actually pretty good. They were very confident they were going to go in and have a good tournament, at least be able to get 5. The cutoff weight was somewhere around, I think, 8 pounds. So, definitely within their reach, nothing crazy. It was a lake that we had been to. I have no idea, but sometimes you get to those certain places, kind of like a sports team where you get the World Series, you can't seem to win that World Series, or you get to a certain competitor and you just can't ever seem to get everything right to beat that certain competitor. Well, in Landon and Jackson's case, that is definitely going to be the regionals. So we've got one more shot at it next year to be able to place, hopefully, in regionals next year and make our way to state. I got a feeling that we are going to sell out big time for the regionals next year. I will give them everything that I've got within my power to try to put them on fish next year. And hopefully we can break this little curse that we've got for the last 2 years of winning Angler of the Year and then not making it in regionals. Very strange, but hey, that's how fishing goes. So anyways, that's really it. As far as the recap on Palestine, if you're kind of wanting to know how we did out there, pre-fishing was actually pretty good. The water was very murky up on the north end, Kickapoo and the Neche side. Very, very dirty. One of the things that we finally found once we, from pre-fishing the weekend before, of course, you couldn't be on the lake until Friday before the tournament. So there was an off period there that typically, typically you don't have. But the weekend before was really good. The water was very, very murky up on the north end. But what we found was that white swim jigs really worked well in the morning. There was actually, and I know you're going to think I'm crazy because I thought I was crazy too, but we're pulling in to, I believe we were going in the back of Kickapoo on the Saturday before the tournament. So the week before, we were pulling into Kickapoo and we look off to our right and there's a shad spawn going on. literally in early April, there's a shad spawn going on. So we saw that, went over to the bridge, tried to see if we can get some action on the shad spawn. Crazy enough, we didn't catch any fish there, but what we did do is we kept going and we went back to that back side. Just basically, you just go straight down the bridge and then you hang a left. And there's a big creek channel that comes over and really makes a real big turn. And on the inside of that turn, there's a bunch of cypress trees. And those cypress trees had some shad spawn going on around them. And that brought in all the big girls. And Landon caught 2 or 3 big ones. I'll show you a picture here of one of the ones that he caught. But we thought we were on the spot. We thought, man, literally, we catch 2 of these fish, we're in state, right? So that obviously was going to be a great spot to go to. And then come tournament day, that spot absolutely sucked. They didn't even catch a fish there. So it was crazy. Now, they did catch 7 fish throughout the tournament, but they were all small and non-keepers. So they were getting some bites, but just weren't getting the right bites. Overall, the tournament, they did pretty well. There was 19 pounds that won the tournament. There was a pretty big drop from there. I think it dropped to like 14 or 15 pounds after that. So not a lot of big bags, but there were still kids that were getting their limits. There was no reason why we shouldn't have. I think it's that we're just kind of jinxed on regionals. We're going to break that next year for sure. So anyways, white swim baits, white swim jigs were really the key for us in pre-fishing in the morning. That was really the go-to lure. Now, we did get some frog bites. If you've been watching any of the MLF stuff, you'll actually see that they're throwing frogs as well. Most of them are throwing popping frogs. And there were a few out there, I think, that were throwing some walking frogs. We were throwing walking frogs and having some pretty good success, but not the success that we would have thought we'd have on a frog, especially if there were shad spawn going on around us. So I think the key there is that we should have switched over to a popping frog. Instead of using that walking frog when we weren't getting the bites that we wanted, we probably should have switched to a popping frog. I admittedly just love the walking frog. I can't help it. I'm just attracted to it. But sometimes you got to throw the frog that's actually most effective during that time. So that's one of the keys here for tonight, talking about the spring fishing and during the spawn. What baits actually work? What happens if you go out there and the water's super dark and you can't see anything? So you can't do your sight fishing. You want to do your sight fishing, your bed fishing. But what if you don't do that? Or what if you're like me and that's not really your thing? How do you catch these fish? Because it can be very, very difficult. Well, some of the things, obviously, if shad spawn's going on, that changes everything with those white swim jigs. But let's just talk about regular spawn. So the bass are spawning. We have no shad spawn. Let's say it's here in Hubbard. What are we going to throw to get those fish? If we can't see them on the beds or we're not fishing beds, how are we going to catch them? Well, there's some really key baits out there that for us started working during the weekend. And really, I guess I should kind of go back. Now, Jason, our other captain, was actually the captain for Landon and the boys this weekend. So I was down there with Steve, my boat, but I went and fished Lake Athens, and then I went and fished Lake Tyler. So I learned some things as I was out there fishing them and figured I'd just share those things with you. Again, I struggle during the spawn. I really do struggle during the spawn unless I'm actually sight fishing. And again, that's not really my thing. So how do we catch them? Well, first off, you can still get them on some moving baits. So make sure that you're taking full advantage of swim baits right now. Swim baits are key to being able to get some bites. So make sure you're throwing swim baits. Don't forget about them. They're key right now. Throw those swim baits. That's huge. Also, your frogs, your popping frogs are going to be really good right now. So make sure you're throwing your popping frogs. And then always make sure you've got some type of a crankbait tied on, like a square bill or something like that, where you're just banging it off of, and you will actually be able to get some reaction strikes off of that. Other than that, when we're talking about going really, really slow, the 2 baits I think you really should focus in on and that were really working well for me were Wacky Worms. Just totally weightless Wacky Worms, very slow, methodical fishing. If I was pulling up, on down there on the lakes down there in Palestine, and you'll see it with the MLF guys, those fish are so shallow, it's ridiculous. I'm talking like super shallow. And so most of the time, and I think this is why we struggle, most of the time when we get up there to the shallower water, we would either spook them or we'd disturb the water because we were coming in too fast. So you had to be very, very slow when you went up there. So I would get to where I would start trolling, way back away from the bank, and then just kind of barely come up to the bank, and then hopefully had enough breeze behind me to kind of keep me pushing along where I wasn't using really any electronics. I was clearly just sight fishing, looking for the fish, and then trying to throw at them. That's hard to do, and that takes some patience to do, and you really got to be aware of all the noise and stuff like that that you're making. But I think that's why I struggle during spawn. They're up so shallow, just so extremely shallow that it almost becomes hard to catch them. And that's why the Wacky Worm does good, because it's weightless. You're only fishing in, 6 to 10 inches of water basically. So the Wacky Worm doesn't have to do much. You don't have to be as slow with it. That works well. And the other thing that worked well for me, which you guys might laugh, but I noticed one of the MLF guys was using it, and I use shaky heads constantly. But what I did was I took a tip from one of the MLF guys, and on the shaky head, I downsized it to an 1/8 ounce shaky head, and I put an actual Senko on there, just a 5 inch, I think it's a 5 inch Senko, just your standard size Senko. Put that on a shaky head, literally would throw it out and just dead stick it. And all of a sudden, I just started getting a ton of bites. Now, they weren't huge bites, but I was getting bites. Now, I've never thrown a Senko on a shaky head. That's not something that I had in my toolbox, but it's definitely something that I have confidence just right out of the gate. I mean, as soon as I put it on, it changed everything. So try those things. Try the popping frog. Try the white swim jig. Try the Senko on a shaky head, and try your square bills up around any kind of rock or anything like that that you can find. And I believe you're going to be able to get some fish this weekend. Hey, I'll keep you guys updated, get you guys some better video with some live content, all of that. Now that the high school bass fishing is over, I can start recording us out on the water. You can start hopefully learning some additional tips and tricks that we have up our sleeve. We'll be fishing a lot of Hubbard. I believe we plan on going out to Levon as well. And then we'll probably start working on Tawakoni. We've got the Tawakoni Bass Club that's coming up here at the end of May. So we'll probably start working that lake pretty good as well. So anyways, guys, I appreciate everything that you guys do for me, for subscribing to the channel, for purchasing the cards, all that good stuff. Really appreciate it. I'll continue to try to give you guys the tips that I have to share with you, and hopefully all of us can become better fishermen. Until next time, I hope you catch your PB. Take it easy.